Hey everyone, so we're just going to introduce you to the Bodice Block today. There's a series of videos. The first one is just going to be kind of basic introduction, remind you how to cut your markers and prepare your blocks, and then we'll move on to manipulating darts, adjusting different dart positions, and how we can basically change the design of our bodice. So I just want to talk you through these two pieces. So we've got a front piece and the back piece. So you'll have these markers in your kits. Same as the skirt markers, you'll have full scale, half scale and quarter scale. And you want to make sure you have all of the different scales cut out and prepped. For your homework, I would suggest using half scale for the, half scale for the slash and spread method, and then you could move on to quarter scale for your pivot method transfers. You could also use full scale as well for the slash and spread. I'm going to use these anyway, full scale, just to show you the demos. I think it's going to make life a little bit easier. So let's talk through the front and the back. So the front piece, I'll just lay it out. So we've got the center front, we've got a dart. So this is the waist dart. Okay, so it basically runs from the bottom of the waist of the bodice and it runs up to the bust point. Okay, so whenever we're moving darts, we always need to make sure that they're joining up with the bust point. So the new dart line has to be drawn to the bust point. Okay. Okay, so then we've got the armhole. This top part here is the shoulder, and then of course the neckline. You might also find in the future you might come across bodice or slopers that have bust darts as well. You might have two darts in place, but for your markers you've just got the waist dart on the front. And then right here, so this is the back piece. So center back. Okay, so again, just like the skirts, you're only going to you have half of the block. We've got another waist dart here, and we've also got a shoulder dart. We've got the neckline, the shoulder line, and the armhole, and then this would be our side seam. The same as this piece front. I think I didn't show you that, but you've got the side seam here too. Okay, so yeah, just spend a bit of time looking over your pieces, getting familiar with the different areas. And just to recap, when you're prepping your blocks, depending on what card you've got, I'm not sure if you've got access to cards, but even for future reference, the best way you could do this is have your block so that the rolled edge is flattened when you trace over it, if that makes sense. So you want to have the paper on top of the card as it's rolling, and then that way when you place your block down and you draw around it, it's just going to give you a little bit more control. It's going to be easier for you to kind of distribute your weight and trace around your blocks. Okay, so you can cut out the paper first and then stick it down to the card, or you could just stick the whole marker down onto the card and then cut the pieces out separately. Just be careful, obviously, when you're cutting, you want to make sure that you're not cutting into or cutting off any of the original lines of the block. You want to keep it as accurate as possible. And then when you're sticking the paper down as well, just make sure that it's staying quite smooth, there's not any air bubbles or anything like that. Again, it's just going to give you a more accurate sloper at the end of it. Okay, so there's a little bit of a recap on charting different dart locations for your block. So if you have the textbook, you can actually go to page 74, but I'm just going to, this is basically on the underside of my block, and all I've done is drawn in some different locations or some different ideas of where I could move my original dart to. Okay, so this is my original waist dart. It's at the same location. I've just flipped it, And then all of these lines are the different areas that we could use. You could obviously come up with your own locations. You don't have to follow these, but these are, I guess, traditional terms and traditional areas, you know, that they use in the industry. So it's good to be familiar with that. So I'll just show you on page 74. Might need to zoom in a little bit there, maybe. Let's have a look. Yeah. And I think this is a good thing to do. You could do this on the underside of your pattern, maybe just on the full scale and the half scale, just so you've got it for reference. And you just basically draw in the lines, and then you can label them, and then you've got that forever for future reference. So I'll just sort of demo how I went about doing that. So I did that in pencil first. But with your new lines, all you need to do is start from the edge of your pattern and bring it down to the bust point. So I'll just grab a pen and I'll go over a few of these. So first of all, I drew my original in. So the thing to note is, obviously, because I've done this on the underneath, everything has been mirrored, which is fine. So this was my original dart. So I drew this in, and I made sure that I put a drill hole in at the bust point. So I'm just drawing my dart leg in. So rolling up a little bit. And then I just shaded this as well. So this just reminds me that, okay, that's where my original dart is. And you could label that A, B, the dart legs. So now let's start drawing in some of these different locations of where we could move our dart. So I'm going to identify, this is my center front. So if I'm looking at this image here, I'm going to kind of work my way around anti-clockwise. So I've got center front waist. So I can just see here, again, it starts from my bust point and it just intersects at the center front and at the waist. So right on that point there. So then all you do is grab your ruler and draw a straight line from the bust point to the center front waist. Like so. Okay, and then you can label it. So they actually have numbers too, so I can put number 9, center front waist. So let's do another one. So again, I'm working my way round. So remember, I've flipped it round. So center front bust level. So that basically means it's on the same level as my bust, but it's just intersecting at the center front. So it's just a straight line. You just want to make sure that it's square. I'm just going to draw that in. So that's number 8. Center front bust level. Okay. Alright, let's do another one. So I'm just going to show you the center front neck. So this time, start at the bust point, and you're just going to take it all the way up to this point here. So this is obviously my neck line, and then this is my center front. So it's right on the edge there. And again, you can refer to the image in the textbook for clarification. I'm going to write here, number 7, center, front, neck. So all it is a series of different lines in different locations on the bodice, and where we can manipulate our dart. So for example, I could close this dart and I could open this dart. I could transfer it up to my center front neck, or I could close it and transfer it to my center front bust level. So you've already got this template, and this is going to basically help you with future projects. And you can also use these names as well. It just sounds much more professional. So rather than to say, okay, I'm just going to take it up to the shoulder, you can say, okay, mid-shoulder, for example. And there's also another line called French seam. You could say number 1. I'm going to close this dart and I'm going to open it and make a French dart. Okay, so it's just really helpful, I think, you know, to have the knowledge of what these different locations are and just have the template. So I'm just going to put in this French one. So this is number 1 and this is French. So okay, so you could obviously, you know, continue to do that, label them, go all the way around the block, and then you've got them in place for the future. So then you can obviously imagine if you were tracing your new block and think, okay, I want to move it to the center front neck, you know, you can just flip it back and you can see, okay, that's where I need to make the notch, my new line, and then you would draw in your new dart line from your bust point to the center front neck. Okay, so yeah, just something I would recommend doing on the bottom of your pattern pieces. Once you've cut them out, I think it's helpful to have that. Okay, I wouldn't, I mean, you could do it on the front. I just like to keep the front of my blocks quite clean and then just have that on the back for reference if I need it. So just a couple more things about the bodice block. We haven't really spoken about what it's for. You can obviously make tops and blouses, you know, that's probably the most obvious thing, but we also use the bodice block to make jackets, coats, blazers, and also dresses as well. So it could be the starting point for a dress, and we could then, you know, go on and add like a skirt section based on the skirt blocks that we've been using. So it's a really versatile pattern piece, and obviously as you move on to level 2, you'll start to you know, develop skills in this area and manipulating this pattern a little bit more. But yeah, we're just going to start off with the basics. So we're going to look at moving the position of darts again. So we're going to recap using the slash and spread method, and we're also going to be getting some practice in using the pivot transfer technique, which we have looked at. We looked at it once on our skirt blocks, but we're going to have a little bit more of a kind of detailed look and a bit more of a practice with that, because once you get the hang of that, it's much quicker and can be more effective. If you are doing a lot of drafts, you'll just find it's much quicker than rather kind of cutting all of your pattern pieces out. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for this video. That was the introduction, and then yeah, if you move on to the second video, there'll be a demonstration on moving this waist dart to different locations.